that, Thanksgiving is upon us. Usually Thanksgiving is such a family holiday. We have tradition, we have recipes that we've been making in our families for years and years and years. And honestly, I didn't want to mess with that. So instead of giving you like very well-intentioned, beautiful vegetarian recipes to serve at your Thanksgiving table, I thought instead I could help you repurpose some of the vegetable sides that you might have left over after your family Thanksgiving. And that's what I will be talking about today. So before I get into it, I just want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. Does anyone have any questions or anything that they need to address before they get going? Please feel free to put that in the chat box. Also, if you have a question about a particular vegetable side left over, put that in the chat box and maybe we could all sort of hive mind, brainstorm some ideas for you if you feel like you might enjoy that. So, okay, are we good, Tanya?
We should be good.
All right, awesome.
We get a little echo while working on it.
Okay, all right, so yeah, we're having a technical difficulty day, as some of you may already be aware. So the first thing that I will be making today is going to be using leftover mashed sweet potatoes. Mashed sweet potatoes are something that I grew up with at my Thanksgiving table. We kept them pretty basic, either a little bit of butter or olive oil, salt or pepper. If you put any warm spices in yours, like cinnamon or nutmeg or ground clove or allspice, that would all work in this dish. Roasted potatoes that you've mashed would also work for what I'm about to show you. The only thing that probably would not work is sweet potato casserole, because I'm really not sure what kind of soup that would make, honestly. But what we're going to do here is start with about 2 cups of sweet potato. And again, you all are going to get the recipes in an email after this session. But I'm going to be making a West African inspired sweet potato peanut soup or stew. This can honestly be either one depending on how much liquid you're using. So I've got some sweet potato here. Let's see if you can see that there. I've got some diced canned tomato that I'll be using, some low sodium vegetable broth. There we go. I'm going to be using some ground cumin, some ground cinnamon, as well as some peanut butter, onion, cilantro, and peanut. And you see those all on the cutting board in front of you. And this is such an easy soup to make because it's just dump and heat. So putting in my sweet potato into a pot on the stove, I'm going to go on and put in a 14.5-ounce can of diced tomato. I'm going to go and put in about half of a diced onion. I'm going to add my ginger now. I'm going to wait to add the cilantro and the peanut until the end, but I am going to add my cilantro stems. There's a lot of flavor in there and they get just tossed into the trash. And it's a shame. So I'm going to go on and do that. And then up to you, but about half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of cinnamon and the same amount of cumin. A little bit of salt. The reason why I like to use low sodium vegetable broth is because then you get to kind of control the sodium or salt a little bit better in your soup. It's really up to you though. If you just want to use regular vegetable broth or stock or even chicken stock or homemade, whatever is easier for you. I find that I usually have quite a bit of broth left over after the Thanksgiving holiday. So I'm probably just going to use what I have. I've mentioned this in previous classes, but a great way to make your own vegetable stock is to keep all of the bits and scraps and bobs from vegetables that you've been cutting up for other recipes that you cook at home, and put those scraps in a Ziploc bag, like a gallon-sized bag, in the freezer, and just keep adding to it. And as you do, when it's full, you're going to have a beautiful base to make your own vegetable stock. And then you just cover it by a couple inches with cold water, let it come to a boil, and then simmer it for about 30 minutes. Strain it, and you've got veggie stock. So I'm not sure, I'm going to go on and bring this over to the camera, but you can see here what that looks like, right? You've got all of your things in there, and you're just going to bring it to a boil and then turn it down to a simmer. Heat is on, and this is going to take, depending on how cool your ingredients were to begin with, not too long, maybe about 10 or 15 minutes to come up to a boil. You want to warm it through, and really what you're looking for here is just for the tomatoes and the onions to start to break down a little bit, and that's how you're going to know that it is ready to cook. And I actually, through the magic of television, have one that I can show you. So this is what it looks like when it's broken down, all right? And you can eat it just like this. We've just got one final step to do, or you can puree it. So I wanted to show you what it looked like when it was not pureed, because it's really good just like this. The final step, though, before you puree it, is to add a little bit of the liquid from the soup and stir it into peanut butter. So the use of peanuts makes this a traditional West African inspired stew, as well as the use of the yam and some of those, again, warming spices. Sometimes this is called mafe, sometimes this is called groundnut stew, but it's a really sort of rich and satisfying stew, especially when it's like cold and rainy outside like it is today. You'll often see greens in this as well. You can use something like collard greens. I've seen some recipes with spinach, maybe with sweet potato leaves, or even kale, if that's something that you'd like. So we have, I'll use this spoon right here. You can see how the peanut butter kind of made it that nice kind of creamy texture. Bonus too, that this is actually a vegan dish. So if anyone is looking to go truly plant-based, then this is going to be a really nice recipe to do that with, as long as you haven't put any butter in your sweet potatoes. I went on and just mashed mine with a little bit of olive oil. So this is truly a vegan dish. So you can see what this looks like just like that. Serve it over rice or another traditional starch if you like, such as fufu, which is a cassava root, or if you'd like to blend it, sorry, it's going to be a little loud. I usually like to leave it a little bit chunky. My husband usually prefers it that way, so I like to leave a little bit of texture in there. But that's all that you need to do. You can make this a little bit thinner or thicker, depending on your preference. But it's really tasty. I'm going to ladle some out and show you how to garnish it. So there we go. We've got a little bit of some West African sweet potato stew, garnished with a little bit of peanut, a little bit of cilantro, and there it is, just made from your leftover mashed sweet potato. All right, so moving on to our next dish. We're flying here by the seat of our pants. Okay, sorry, clean up. I'll see you here. Okay, so we're gonna make gnocchi. Does anyone know what gnocchi is? Let us know in the chat box. I think it's become kind of more popular. You can find shelf-stable gnocchi, you can find frozen gnocchi, or you can make your own with leftover mashed potato. Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Potato dumplings.
Exactly. They're potato dumplings. Sometimes they'll be also made out of sweet potato. You could totally do this with leftover mashed sweet potato. You could use leftover pumpkin. You can even use no tubers at all and make a ricotta gnocchi. That is also delicious. But this one is going to be made with leftover mashed potato. And I love this stuff, I swear. We were just talking about, Tanya and I, before the presentation today, just how satisfying biting into a little gnocco, which is the singular, is. And the word gnocchi is kind of funny. Sometimes people can't say it. It's not gnocchi, but it's thought to come from the old Italian word for knuckle, because it looks like a little bump, or maybe even a knot in a wood. That's kind of what they're thinking it comes from. But all I have here is about a cup of mashed potato, and I'm going to add an egg.
While you're demoing, can you talk about possible gluten-free?
Yeah, so you can make this with gluten-free flour. I've not done it myself, but that would be something to experiment with. If you have a favorite gluten-free flour that you like to use, then that's what I would recommend. I know that there's one called Cup for Cup that I think is pretty well recognized as a good option for gluten-free flour. And then, of course, there are people that make their own blend. I am not talented in that arena, but if anyone is, please feel free to maybe put your notes in the chat. But if you do make this, let us know how it works. Another option too would be to kind of go with the sort of proto recipe. So the very old original recipe for gnocchi actually was made with breadcrumb and potato. And if you start with a gluten-free breadcrumb, that might be another option for you. But again, I haven't done it. So if you do it, please let us know. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding a little bit of flour, right? We're talking about flour. That's what I'm adding in. And honestly, I find that depending on the weather, it makes a difference with how much flour you need to add to your gnocchi. And when I was doing a test batch today, I noticed that I had to use more flour today than I just did 2 days ago when I made some at home. And it just has to do with the humidity in the air, I think. But the reason why I'm paying so much attention to how much flour I'm adding to my gnocchi is because you don't want to add too much. And again, it just sort of depends on how wet your mashed potatoes are. It depends on the humidity in the air. But you really want to pay attention, because if you add too much flour, then your gnocchi can get a little bit like gummy. And that's not really what you're going for. You want it to be sort of light, because it's like a dumpling, right? So you don't want it to be a sinker. You want it to be a floater, okay? So what I've got here is just this dough. You'll know it's kind of almost done when that stickiness is sort of going away. And I'm going to use a silicone mat here, but any sort of floured surface will be helpful for you for rolling out your gnocchi. Probably going to put a lot more flour down. Get rid of some stuff here. All right, take my big ring off. So put it onto your surface. And again, this is just made with mashed potato. You could use mashed sweet potato. You could use pumpkin. You could use a mixture of root vegetables. I bet that would be really delicious too, although I've never done it. I'm just going to put a little bit more flour. How am I doing on time? All right. So I'm using a bench scraper or dough scraper here, just in the interest of not making a gigantic mess. But this is kind of a fun thing to do with kids too, because you're literally asking them to play with their food. And so I can imagine, yes, it might be a little bit messy, but totally. And all I'm doing here is mixing in a little bit of that flour, and then I'm going to go on and segment it into roughly 4 sections to roll into ropes. You can see how this is taking a lot of flour today. I love this flour shaker. This is my grandma's. Have you ever seen those sets that's like that colored kind of aluminum? I think it is. I don't know. But that's what I'm using today. All right. So I'm going to flour my hands too. And while you're doing this, you can think about what kind of sauce you want to put. So traditionally, there's a tomato sauce with like cheese you can do. You can do a brown butter. You can do pesto is also really delicious. You can even float them in like a chicken broth and make a little bit of a soup. So it's really up to you what you want to do. Oh, these are so wet. So in the interest of time, I'm going to show you what I did in the previous prep segment. So what I've got here are what they look like. So here's a little bit of dough. And this one was behaving just a little bit better, as you can see. And once you roll it out into a little rope like this, this is why you do prep ahead of time. Then you can cut little sections. And drop it into boiling water, which I've already got. You want to already salt your water, and then that way you're seasoning the dumplings also from the inside out. Got some already made for you here. Tanya is handing me towels because I have mashed potatoes all over me right now. And there's a couple of neat ways that you can shape your gnocchi too. So you can leave them just like little dumplings, which is these are already cooked. And this is literally just dropping the dumplings into the boiling water until they float. It maybe will take like a minute or two, and you'll see that they float pretty easily as long as there's enough flour in there. When they're like this, when they don't have much of a shape, sometimes they're called malfatti, which basically means badly formed. So if you make your gnocchi and they come out malfatti, you can tell people that you meant for it to happen. It's traditional Italian and they can't argue with you. But if you want to be a little bit more refined, a little bit more fancy, and maybe you have a sauce that you're really proud of and you want that gnocchi to kind of catch the sauce, you can create ridges in your gnocchi a couple different ways. You can use the back of a fork like this. So these are already formed, and you can see you're just going to create these really kind of subtle ridges on your fork. And when you're doing that, I'm not sure if they're going to show up on the camera, but these ridges will catch sauce. So this is going to be good for something like a tomato sauce, for example, or even a pesto. And then I have, there's no earthly reason why I really need to have one of these, but I picked it up because I wanted one. This is a gnocchi board. It's the same thing. It has little ridges in it. It's just made out of wood. And you can roll your dough down the gnocchi and it creates those little ridges. So super cool. Again, all you do is you drop these into boiling water until they float. And you'll see that the ones that I had preformed, I went on and I put on a parchment paper lined tray. That's just so they didn't stick too much. If you wanted to do this ahead of time, I would do that and then maybe freeze them very well spaced out on that parchment paper tray, because these gnocchi, they will turn on you in an instant and they will become just a big glob. So what I've got, some of them are already floating. And what I've got in the skillet in front here is just butter. And I went on and I put some sage and thyme leaves in there, sort of like a nice fall dish. And just gonna toss these in a little bit of butter, salt and pepper, and some Parmesan cheese. That's probably gonna be my lunch. All right, probably another 30 seconds on those. Any questions on the gnocchi? Has anyone ever made these before? You can go on and put that in the chat. It's so funny how dough, it's so finicky. Let's spew it out. All right.
Heaven bases that love to eat them.
I know, I love to eat them. And honestly too, like one thing that I just learned recently about gnocchi, those shelf-stable ones, they don't even need to be boiled first. With the fresh ones, you kind of do. But if you have a package of gnocchi in your cupboard and you want to eat them, go on and pan fry them directly or cook them on a sheet pan. And what happens is they get this really nice like texture, kind of crisp on the outside, but still a little bit doughy on the inside. And they are delicious.
I've had bad luck with gnocchi too gummy. Is there a fine line between them holding together and eating too much?
I cannot nod more emphatically. Yes, there really is. And you know, it's practice too. The more that you do it, the more that you'll recognize like, oh, this is good, and oh, this is too far. So I've got my gnocchi here. There's my sage. And these are super hearty and filling. So really only a few are enough, all right? But they're really good. So it's hard to stop eating them. Okay, so next, one last dish. We've got our appetizer. We've got our main course. Yes, we are a little bit carb heavy, but you know, it's what the holidays are about, right? We're gonna make pie. We're gonna make little hand pies using leftover. Does anyone have any ideas? Any guesses? Leftover cranberry sauce. Okay. So get rid of some mess here. And this recipe really works better with homemade cranberry sauce. The chunky stuff, not the canned stuff that you can slice. Although, if anyone does want to try it with that, then please let me know. So if someone's asking like relish, I guess, yeah, if you call it relish, I probably, so this is fully sweet. There's no like onion or anything in there. I think this is not, you know, Mama Sandberg's cranberry horseradish relish from NPR. This is what we called cranberry sauce growing up. It's cranberries, orange juice, sugar. It's the stuff that's on the back of the package. That's the recipe, okay? That's my mom's secret recipe. So what I've got here is, sorry, Tanya, pre-made pie dough. I am terrible at making pie dough. Like, it's a joke. I think I have really hot hands, and it is just, it's not feasible for me to do. So I've tried many, many times. This is just a frozen pie dough sheet. Some of my favorite pie dough that's out there in the sheets, I honestly do like the Trader Joe's one, but this is not that. This is from Kroger. So whatever you want to use, or if you are gifted in the pie dough area, please use your own because it'll be even better. But all I'm doing is just kind of smoothing this out. And I have a little 4-inch cutter that I'm going to use because I thought the circles were cute. You can also do this in a square if you like, or really any other shape if you have a cookie cutter that you'd like to do. So I'm just gonna cut out a few of these, and you'll get about 8 out of a sheet of pie dough. Go on and lay this on a parchment paper sheet. The recipe that I'll give you guys suggests that you preheat your oven to 450 degrees. That's what this particular packaged pie dough asks for. I think that's pretty standard for packaged pie dough, but keep in mind that whatever one you choose might be different. And then once you cut it out, you can just roll it out again with the cutest, tiniest rolling pin ever. This is my favorite rolling pin. Do your best to roll it back out to that original thickness. okay? And then you would be able to go on and just cut it again. I'll show you how you fill these. Once you've got it on your sheet, and I find it's easier to fill them on the sheet because then you're not like picking up something that's kind of difficult to wrangle. I've got a little bit of cinnamon sugar here. Everyone can see that. And this is just for a little bit of fun, a little bit more flavor. You could add other spices in here too. Ginger would be really nice. You could even put a little slice of crystallized ginger in each little hand pie. I think that would be really delicious. Got my cranberry sauce here. Again, very special gourmet recipe, just what is on the back of the package. It's so cool how it sets up overnight, right? I mean, it's like jelly. And when I made this, actually, I went on and put the orange sections in there because I used some fresh squeezed juice. Just, I had an orange in the fridge. I went on and put those sections in there. So I'm putting in maybe about a tablespoon or so. It's probably a little bit too much there of sauce for each pie. Okay. And then I'm going to put in a couple of apple slices. These are just like a Gold Rush type apple, Granny Smith type apple, but you can use whatever kind that you like. Notice as I'm doing this, I'm leaving a border around the edge of each little round, and you would do the same thing if you were doing this on a square. And then I'm going to dab some egg wash along the edge, and this acts as glue to help seal your little pies. And these are fun. Once you bake these, you can freeze them. It's a great little dessert. It could be a great breakfast, a little brunch action. And you're just going to go on and sort of roll the apples as you fold and seal. You could definitely use a fork to seal this if you wanted it to have that kind of crimped look, or the glue, the egg will also act as a glue. And then you would bake these in a 450-degree oven. My oven took 14 minutes, but it would be anywhere from, I'd say, 12 to 15 minutes. You want them to be golden brown, and you can use your leftover egg to paint on the top of the pie, and that will also help with that golden brown color. So again, 450 degrees, about 14, 15 minutes, and they will look like these cute little guys. All right, so you can see I got 8 out of the sheet here. You could do a little bit of powdered sugar on top, which I had here somewhere. You probably do want to sift your powdered sugar to make it a little clumpy.
You used whole egg white in your wash, or whole.
I used a whole egg. I did. You could, yeah. Tanya, maybe you can explain the science of that, because I've seen egg white, I've seen egg yolk in water, I've seen egg in water. I'm asking Chef Tanya, she's on.
They all have a little bit different. With the yolk, you get a little bit darker glaze.
Okay.
It may just be color rather than protein content.
Yeah, I don't know. I've done it all ways, and it works for me. Sort of depends on like what I remember to do that day. Maybe you all kind of have a similar. But you could do, with your powdered sugar, you could even also make a little bit of icing. You know, that very simple icing with like powdered sugar, liquid of your choice, maybe a flavor extract like vanilla or almond extract. And then just make a little icing to put on there. If you did them square instead of these half moon shapes, you could even make cranberry Pop-Tarts and then put the icing on top of that too. But I would not recommend putting that in your toaster, because that would be terrible. So 12:46, you guys, I made 3 different items. You've got your appetizer soup, you've got your gnocchi main, and you've got your cranberry hand pie dessert. I hope this gives you some good ideas for repurposing some of your holiday leftovers. I also want to draw your attention to the fact that UK Health and Wellness is doing a web-based holiday campaign that will be coming out pretty soon. You're going to be, I have some notes to make sure I say it right, but we're going to be hosting a 31-day gratitude challenge. That will be a web page that will be released soon. We're going to share suggestions for ways that you can practice gratitude in your own life. And that's going to be from December 15th to January 14th. And you'll be able to sign up for this gratitude challenge on your health and wellness dashboard very soon. So keep an eye out for other communications regarding that. I hope all of you have a lovely holiday weekend next week. Thank you so much for attending today. Again, you will get a copy of the recipes as well as a link to the recording of this demo. So everyone have such a great week. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. I'll stay on and answer them as I need to. So for those of you who are leaving and for those of you who are watching the recorded version, I'm Vanessa Oliver with UK Health and Wellness. Thanks so much. And if you want to ask questions and put your mic on, that's fine too.
Vanessa, I have a quick question. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Vanessa?
All right, if anyone has any questions who's still here, you can email me at vanessa.oliver@uky.edu and I'm happy to answer questions there too. Thanks you guys so much.